New video. Hasan gets a lot of hate from the left and right versus consumerism. For this video, I'm talking about our left's relation with the consumer capitalism and ask if it's pointless to be an ethical consumer as much as we can. Yeah, I watched pieces of it.
Only exist.
I watched like the main part where it was like, he was just like talking about my materialism, right? Bro, why is it always people? Why is it people calling me capitalist are quite literally like doing what I'm doing, but worse? It's always like, it's never like stevedore, okay? It's never like a dude working at the dock. It's never a driver. It's always like, I'm doing what you're doing, but just worse. Why? Like, what? What are you saying?
At his Navi, you look like you live in
It quite literally is never just, if you're going to call me a capitalist, you can't have a Substack. I'm sorry. You straight up are not allowed to have a Substack if you're going to be like, wow, dude, I can't believe this guy sure is, you know, farming some subs, huh?
Love your
I'm sorry, but this is the same as the girl who wrote an essay about not going to a Taylor Swift concert. Kind of, but also ultimately, it's a good video. He likes you. I mean, I agree with the ending of his video, but I don't really know why this part exists in the video of like my materialism, because like the final conclusion basically undermines the argument that like I'm engaging in you know, the like extraordinary amounts of unethical consumption.
So I thought I'd have to address all the allegations. Like, this feud has been tearing like the whole left apart. You have Team Hasan, Team Kavernacle, everyone's talking about it. Everyone's like reacting to it on their own Twitch stream. So I thought I'd clear the air. I said I wasn't going to address this, but when it just got so crazy online, so I've enlisted the help of my journalist girlfriend, Holly, who has interviewed the likes of Katy Perry, Ellie Goulding, Rosamund Pike, people far more famous than Hasan and I. And I just thought we'd get some objective coverage from Holly here. Obviously, no bias involved. Now, I didn't actually watch the whole Hasan reacting to my video, but Holly did, twice in fact, to prepare for this. So what I thought we'd do today is Holly would just question me about some of the points raised, and we get to the bottom of this whole like drama. Now, also one more thing to just say before we go forward a bit more is basically I made a video on consumer capitalism last week and about our relationship with consumer capitalism, the left's relationship with consumer capitalism, and Hasan reacted to that video, but he like skipped the first 15 minutes where I talked about my own hypocrisy in terms of consumer capitalism and being a communist. And I think because he skipped the first half of the video, a lot of the second half of the video came off like I was lecturing him about just like buying anything, not just, you know, buying expensive cars and clothes, like literally just buying anything, acting like I lived in a commune and I made everything myself. So I watched some of it and I've seen some of his points, but Holly's actually watched it. And the reason for that is if I watched it myself, I would just want to respond to so much. So instead, we have Holly here to do that. And we have a lot of planes going past every so often. We're probably just going to stop when this happens and then cut it later. And I just thought it would be like nicer. Like, we just had a little dinner in Holly's garden, had some drinks as well, got nice monster mix of some Sprite and gin. So yeah, I thought it'd be a good setting to do this. And you know, it takes a big man to like kind of put an olive branch out. And fortunately, I am that big man. So Holly is going to interview me. And now, Holly, what did you think? What do you think of my video? And what did you think of Hasan's reaction to my video before we get into more specific things?
Yeah. So I'll start off by saying he did recognize that you did a section about how you spoke about how you weren't materialistic.
Yeah.
But yeah, he focused on like the section where you criticized him and stuff. And just to preface this, like, you grew up obviously watching the Young Turks. You shared it with me, like the Young Turks, Hasan, very much like, for me at least, and I think for you too, like our first entry into like kind of
Progressive politics.
yeah, progressive politics, and like just kind of just I don't know, exploring more like leftist like takes and stuff. So like we definitely, and as Hasan said in the video, you're not a bad guy, you're not like doing it for clout. This isn't for clout either. This is very much, I said I'm
being the big man.
No, I said I'm very interested to hear what he has to say. Like I respect both content creators. One more than the other, I won't say who. But yeah, I'm just genuinely interested to hear what you have to say. So yeah, as Hasan recognized, like this is very much like good faith kind of response, like just very much like just want to hear what you have to say.
And it's tearing the left apart. So yeah, what do you think of my video from last week?
Yeah, I'd say I pretty much agreed with you. Having watched Hasan's take as well, I think I still came out agreeing with you for the most part. I just wanted to hear like your responses to some of the things he had to say. But yeah, like obviously the beginning of your video was talking about how you're not materialistic. I'd say we're both not very materialistic.
And we mean that not in the communist way, which people kept trying to keep correcting me. I mean it in like the Madonna way.
It's a material world, and I'm a material girl.
Like that type of materialism, not like the communist type, because we weren't, I was being a bit more colloquial with my language. We weren't talking about communist theory here, just to nip that in the bud before people start.
Is that a new theory? The
no,
theory?
No, I'm just trying to make it. It's more about like the Madonna thing than like Karl Marx and and Marxist stuff.
Okay.
But
should we start?
Yeah, let's start.
Okay. So yeah, straight up, he said you weren't making a bad faith argument. You weren't a hater, any of that stuff. And he said, I don't normally watch this stuff, but I think he gave it some time because you were making like fair criticism or whatever. First point that I want to raise that he said socialism is quite literally about getting more of the value that you generate back from your bosses or getting the bag. That's not capitalism. What's your thoughts on that?
He means it's more socialistic to argue as a union you deserve more of the profits for your labor. I agree with that, but I mean, in the spirit of socialism on the path to communism as like this transitional period, I don't think it's about making more money. It's about the democratic like ownership of the workplace. And in my mind, when I think about like a union or a co-op you do and spread the profits fairly. It's not about making as much money as possible. It's about sustaining this to do as your lifestyle. So I've always said if I became rich, I'd make my YouTube channel work a co-op and stuff. So I don't think it's about, enjoying more of the profits of your labor. Although that's, I understand the argument in terms of, like that's what unions argue for. Like you want more profits, you want a fairer wage from your labor exploitation. So I do get that argument. But I think in the context of what he's saying, massive consumer spending as a millionaire Twitch streamer isn't the same as we're a car union and we want more profits for our labor, because people like that aren't going out and spending even more. So I get what he's saying, and in the spirit of like maybe socialist pushback against capitalist exploitation, I understand that. But in terms of like using that as an argument to justify massive consumer spending, like, if you're, again, I don't really care about this stuff, but I still think in the spirit of, if you're trying to tell me that buying, hundreds of thousands worth of a car and like £1,000 Gucci shirt and stuff, that's like in the spirit of socialism, because you're spending more of your money you made for your labor. I just don't accept that as like a socialistic argument. It sounds like a good way to justify massive spending, but I don't think that.
So I'm going to jump ahead here in my question. So one of the points that he made was you are spending within your means, and you're perhaps spending more than would be comparable to like him spending within his means in terms of like luxury items. So he spoke about your football shirt. He assumed it was like Adidas or something. I don't know if you want to in a second clarify like where you got the shirt from, but he was saying like you're spending above within your means, but you're spending money on like a luxury good. That's the same as him, just in terms of both of your income, like how the comparison there. He also suggested this is just like an arbitrary line. Like, where do you draw the line? Like, when does it become like, here's something I'm going to spend for myself, and here is where it becomes like excessive consumption?
He's not wrong about this, but like, there is not something I can do as an individual and it's not a standard that he places upon himself either. If adjusted to his own current income and on his own current financial status, he is not meeting the standards that he presents either. The only difference between him and myself is that I just have more money than he does. We do the same thing. We make content. So from that standpoint, and this goes for everyone with a Ko-Fi, everyone with a Substack, everyone with a Patreon that is like saying similar things. It's just like everyone buys useless shit. You know what I mean? In their own means. And that's a perfectly normal part of existence. The people that say, Hasan, I can't believe you bought that, will then go and buy a Warhammer figurine. You know what I mean? That's an expensive hobby. There's nothing wrong with that.
Even though I try and keep my consumption and I'm really not materialistic at all, I still buy myself nice things sometimes. So here's my Nintendo Switch, original Nintendo Switch. Bought it on launch day because I wanted one, you know, consuming. And then I bought this one when Tears of the Kingdom came out. And I just felt like this has been played so much. Its battery is terrible. It's really starting to slow down. It's really loud. So I'll just buy a new one. Did I need a new one? No, I didn't. Could I justify a new one in my head? Yeah, of course I could, because it was a better product. It works better. And I'm very, very happy I bought it. And even me, a communist who doesn't consider themselves a materialist, even sometimes I just like to buy nice.
So I don't know. Do you think there is like some kind of difference between, oh, I'm going to spend like a little bit of more money on like this nice shirt compared to I'm going to spend $1,000 on like a luxury brand that is very much something reserved for like the rich and famous?
So I think it all comes into optics. So if he's arguing that £1,000 Gucci shirt to him is the same in terms of annual income as me buying a £40 football shirt in Vietnam, then I guess I can understand the argument. But also, like, it's just an interesting way to justify the discrepancy in like wealth. Like, he can buy the same shirt I did. Like, it doesn't mean just because you have more money you have to purchase more luxury goods. And like I was outlining, Gucci, you know, everyone knows these types of brands are made in really exploited labor. And I bought, you know, I don't know where my shirt was made, to be honest, but like there's only 2 shops that actually sell that shirt, like in Vietnam. And it's made by a company that makes like Vietnamese football shirts and stuff. So it's more like a local thing, I guess. I'm guessing it's probably still made in exploitative ways in like a Vietnamese sweatshop or whatever. But yeah, I think that's an interesting thing because my criticism wasn't necessarily spending £1,000. Like if you're going to make the argument, oh, you spend that on consumer goods like £40 versus £1,000, no matter what it is, that's not really my argument. Like I bought this computer for £900.
Yeah.
So what's he going to say? Like, you know, you're spending outside your means because
that was another example he used. He said people probably buying like expensive computers, expensive phones.
Well, obviously, like, I need that for my work. But yeah, so if he's trying to just argue about the discrepancy between that, like I think it's not a great argument because most of my part that he watched was me talking about the spirit of, you know, rejecting consumerism, rejecting a lot of spending, because if you're advocating for a socialist world, I don't think this lifestyle is sustainable for anyone. And he's like an example of like someone who's very much enjoying a more consumerist lifestyle, which most of us will never have. So my thing was, if you're a real socialist, I think you've got to live it a bit more. Not saying you know, that's why I'm a bit annoyed he didn't watch the first part, because I wasn't saying don't spend anything. I'm just saying, like, if you're making insanely like abundant purchases, as he puts it with the Gucci shirt, and, you know, spending 200k on a car as opposed to 100k or 50k or whatever, then I think that flies in a bit of the spirit of like, you know, we're trying to live within our means a bit more. We talk about that a lot on socialism, but you're portraying this lifestyle to a lot of people, which I said was playing into capitalist realism. And then my point was proven straight away, because when he watched it on stream, I get a bunch of people coming in my comments saying, you just want everyone to be poor. You hate rich people. Like, and I wasn't saying that. I was saying normalizing this lifestyle as a socialist and making people think like this is okay is, in my opinion, if you're trying to promote socialist politics, is bad.
So can I just jump in? He was trying to argue that it's relative, and he said, you know, this wasn't a throwaway purchase. You called it a throwaway purchase. He said, yeah, I wear it, and he said it's become like a meme and stuff. So relative to his income, he said that it was like a fair purchase, and he also said it was probably made more sustainably than a lot of, you know, the clothes that normal people wear. Your shirt, for example, you know, probably made in like the same, like similar kind of circumstances. So I don't know, like in terms of like, do you think it's because it's a designer brand that is unattainable for like 99% of the world and what it represents as well?
Yeah, and also the argument that what I'm wearing is more exploitative, if you're going to make the argument they're similar, but with Gucci, the profit margins are even higher. So if I'm buying a shirt that's made in a sweatshop for £40 and it's, you know, how much the labourers are paid, if you're getting a Gucci shirt, that's £1,000 versus the same kind of pay, because Gucci has sweatshops as well. So I don't really understand that argument. You're just feeding into the same system, but you're helping these companies make a bigger profit on their exploitative labor. So like, the shirt thing is not something I really want to get hung up on in terms of like the actual issues with the production. I just, if you want to make the argument, Gucci, Nike, Adidas, all the same, well, that's fine with me. It's more that like, it's the way he justified it is like, I'm going to Coachella with loads of celebrities. Everyone is wearing something like this. So let me buy a Gucci shirt. And I don't think he has to be really relatable to a lot of people. But again, my whole point was capitalist realism, in that you're normalizing a lifestyle which shouldn't exist in a socialist system, in a communist system. And if he advocates for Nordic style socialism, then that's one thing, but he hasn't really elaborated. And then he gives some spicy revolutionary takes. And I'm just like, you're not the type of rich people we hate. You're doing good work and everything. But this materialism is something that's built on third world labor exploitation. And it's something we need to move away from. And everyone's a hypocrite at the end of the day. Like myself, I'm a hypocrite in terms of this stuff as well, because there's no ethical consumption outside, in capitalism. But I just think with all this stuff, it's just, a way to justify this. Just because he's richer than me doesn't mean he has to be more extravagant. Just because I the house thing, I totally accept that and respect it. Like, he lives with his family. It's expensive to live in LA. I don't care that he lives in LA.
I think if you are going to spend a lot of money on something, spend it on a house.
That's what I would do. If I won the lottery, I would buy a house down my road, and those houses are fucking expensive. And I wouldn't care. Like, if it was £1 million and I won the lottery, I would buy that house. So, because I need that to live, and I want to live in the area I grew up. But for extra stuff, again, like I was saying to you, 50k cars are very nice. My car is like, I don't even know how much it probably cost when it was new, but it's like my granddad gave it to me and stuff. So like, then 100k, okay, that's one thing. Tesla's like 70k and they're really nice. The 200k, and like, again, he's saying like, I don't want to wait till I'm like 30 or like older, and I'm just like,
and he didn't want to be accused of laughing as a poor person if he went for like.
But no one's gonna accuse you of laughing as a poor person if you bought a 70k Tesla, for example. No one's gonna accuse you if you bought a 50k like nice Mercedes or something. Yeah. Or even like an old, our friend bought like a 20k Porsche or something. Yeah. So I'm just thinking about like how much money, and also, if you're talking about the car in relation to his income, he doesn't make £1 million every year. So that is a massive chunk of his income that year. And what would my spending be like that? Like, I don't spend that. I don't buy anything. So like, it was a weird kind of argument. But like, I don't want to police what he does. But my main point is, he gets hung up on, well, you wouldn't do this to anyone else. But other people like you aren't saying they're socialists, and that's and my problem is,
you can't do that to a celebrity.
I'm not going to go after. I'm not going to go after like someone who seems nice. Like, who's a celebrity I like. I'm not going to go after Ryan Gosling for buying a 200k car because he's not a socialist Twitch streamer. But mine is, you're making the culture normalize this excessive lifestyle, which isn't attainable for so many people in your own country, let alone on the scale of the world. And my main point with that is proven straight away, because people coming into my comments saying socialism isn't when poor, and I never ever said that. Like, I'm not a poor person. I don't think that. I don't think you can't be a consumer in consumer capitalism. It's mainly like the excessive consumption creates a culture which is contrary to what a socialist should be. Like, imagine me buying that shirt. I could never justify it. And even if I was rich, I couldn't justify it. There's no way. I'd be cringing thinking about buying a £1,000
I know,
shirt.
but he did make the point at the beginning, that's your preference, that's not mine. And but he's saying like, the reason you're taking such issue with this is because it's not in line with your own principles. But for him, he doesn't see it as like inconsistent with like, I don't know, his greater like socialist cause, I suppose.
I mean, at the end of the day, if we got to a communist world and he gave up a lot of the wealth and stuff, that's one thing. But that's my main point is, would someone like him want to give up that? And that's why he was getting, I'll talk about this a bit later, the degrowth thing.
Yeah, we'll move on to that.
He was thinking like, oh, like as a slur against me, but then I was being more realistic.
I'm playing devil's advocate here because Hasan isn't here, but like, you don't know him well enough to know whether he would choose to give up that stuff or not. He did say, if I lived in a country with public transit, I wouldn't have a car. Like, he did say that. You can't say he would.
But that's a bit of a leap between not having a car, which I'm not telling him. I'm not telling him not to have a car. I'm not telling him not to have a nice car. Yeah. I just think there comes a point, and it's like on the border, isn't it? Like 100k, I'd accept a bit more. Like, when it goes a bit further, it's just like, why the extra 100? And that's the problem is not because you bought an expensive car, and he's like saying it's made ethically, union labor, all that shit, electric car, whatever. I'm not criticizing the car necessarily. It's more like this lavish lifestyle which I think personally is incompatible with socialism. But I'm not telling him to live a poor life. I'm just saying the
I'll say as well,
excessiveness.
you can't necessarily say he lives a lavish lifestyle. He has like these two instances of like excessive purchasing. You can't necessarily say that that's how he lives his entire life.
Okay,
You
yeah.
could argue like he's relatively, modest in the
Well,
rest
he
of
says
his
like he
life.
never leaves his home and shit like that.
Right. And just to before we move on from the clothing thing. Yeah. So I think he felt like just in general, he was maybe being held to a higher standard in terms of his clothing choices and like, whether he should shop with ethical brands, whether he should promote ethical brands. He said like, I can't go into a shop, decide I like the shirt, stand there researching where it came from, like where the yarn came from, blah, blah, blah. I'm interested to know your take on that because like
That is ridiculous.
just quickly. Okay, like, quick example. I choose to mostly shop on Depop now. It's like a secondhand clothing, like social media app almost. I choose to do that. And you made this point about like, it's what makes you feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
I personally feel better knowing I'm not purchasing from like Shein or whatever. Hasan said that as well. He's like, I don't buy H&M, don't buy Shein. But, that's me and I'm no one and I'm not influencing to anyone. Do you think that's maybe I don't know, a little bit of a cop out maybe? Does he have more of a responsibility to shop ethically?
The thing is, I like I said in the video, I totally accept that people have consumption hypocrisy, whether that for me it's video games, for other people it's clothes, for other people it's cars. And I the thing is, I said in the video that's okay. Like I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but then with that argument specifically, well, you're so loaded. You don't have to go to a shop and look at it and be like, oh, is that ethical? Research it before, like 2 seconds. You could like
a shop isn't the only place you can buy clothes.
Yeah, I knew Tommy Hilfiger and all that stuff was made with like some of the cheapest laborers in the world in Ethiopia, right? So like that took me like 2 seconds to look that up. So if you are you're rich and you have time to do this, and also like for example, I don't know about his merch, but I'm in talks with people who like work a co-op.
Do you know how he makes his merch?
No,
it's using like apparently the biggest union labor garment workers in the United States. So he said that's where I do have control.
Yeah, so that's interesting to me that like I'm going to do that as well with a different worker co-op, but he can see it there. So he's researched that to make his merch. He doesn't want to make like random.
Yeah, but he made the point like I can't control like the wider garment industry, but I can control it when it's me.
If he is making ethical clothing, what stops him from buying ethical clothing? Like what is the justification that like, oh, I cannot tell when I'm at the shop?
Yeah.
What? So you can research enough to make your merch like I'm doing, or you just have to make an impulsive purchase and not have a look or something?
Yeah. Before we move on, you made a point there that I wanted to catch. You just said everyone has hypocrisies. For you, it's gaming, might be clothes, cars, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He said, like, at the end of the video, he felt like you undermined your whole point by you saying that because it's essentially you were saying, like, you don't meet my standards. You don't meet my, ethical choices and how I live my own life.
Wrapped up neatly in a way where it, like, I find inherently contradictory. I don't agree with... I don't know why he made a whole video because like the end of it literally comes along with him admitting that he's a hypocrite, and he is in recognition of like how you can't really live by your own values, and that I don't know. Openly even recognizing that like corporations engage in like fake pandering, greenwashing initiatives and things like that. I agree with the ending of his video, but I don't really know why this part exists in the video of like my materialism, because like the final conclusion basically undermines the argument that like I'm engaging in the like extraordinary amounts of unethical consumption that everybody understands is like impossible to avoid.
So like, I don't know, like how do you feel about that in terms of in this world that we live in, this like imperfect world where everyone's trying to get by? Is it a case of like, this is where I choose to hold my hypocrisy, but I'm better here? And someone could be like to you, okay, yeah, he wears like old clothing, but he also does this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Like, how do you navigate that?
So everyone's a hypocrite. Like, he's a hypocrite. I'm a hypocrite. It's not even a hypocrite. Like, you can't live outside of this system but we all indulge in things that we knew like are exploitative, and they're consumer purchases rather than stuff we need. So like, gaming, I know like some of these companies, but then there's another thing as well. He didn't want to boycott the Hogwarts game either. So it's like, and we've been talking about that recently on my channel. It's like he thought it might be a better idea to buy it and stream it and then like, get charity donations and stuff, not realizing the implication of you're showing loads of people this game. Of course, people are going to play it if they think it looks fun. Like, why are you going to play it? So, in my opinion, the hypocrisy, there's a limit to the hypocrisy. So, my hypocrisy is spending like a couple £100 on games every year. And like, I know that, I don't know anything about the studios, but I know like Naughty Dog, for example, I like their games. I know the culture there isn't great. Cyberpunk, I know the culture there wasn't great. I know that product is made on exploitative labor, but I just like that stuff. But then we're talking about like communism, socialism. And like I said, it's not, as people are saying, this other guy made a video about socialists not having nice things, and that is not what I'm saying at all. Have a nice house, have a nice car, have nice clothes. Nice clothes don't all cost £1,000 for one shirt. Right. Nice cars don't all cost £200, £200,000. And then my point is, you're so influential, like you're influencing people, and you're not realizing you're making it harder in many ways for us to take the next step, because your audience are all young, impressionable. I'm getting comments in my video, which I know are basically what you said, because that's how parasocial relationships work, and that's my criticism.
I will defend his viewers and say he was reading out comments from chatters that were defending you, or had maybe potentially fans you or had watched the video. Yeah,
but the people who decided to come over and say stuff,
are the ones that easily influence.
I know they were both parroting what he said because they can't think for themselves. They're too young, or they're too they like him too much. They can't take criticism of him. So that's when they start saying, well, socialism is when poor, you're an idiot or some shit like that. Or this is why the left doesn't appeal to anyone. And like, I think, if you're talking to your average Joe in, I think it's different in the UK because we have this class system, right? If you talk to,
as you mentioned in your video,
if you talk to someone working class in the UK, if you told them about Hasan, they'd think that's a joke. They think it's like a sick joke.
What do you mean?
If you said, oh yeah, one of the most famous socialists in the US,
right? Okay,
it's this guy, and they'd be like, you know how low the salary is.
Get torn apart in the tabloids here.
Yeah, like I'm just thinking about people like working class people up north and stuff, and how much they hate rich people. And you try and tell them, like, Jeremy Corbyn gets ripped apart for having a nice house. Right. Imagine, like, the youngest, most famous socialist. Imagine Owen Jones buying a 200k car and a £1,000 Gucci shirt. He's the most famous socialist in the UK. It just wouldn't fly here.
Yeah.
Like, no one would take Hasan seriously in the UK. Out of all the famous leftists we have, Owen Jones is probably most famous. Middle class, has like good book deals, probably has like a fair bit of money. But if he did some of that stuff, he'd be absolutely torn apart.
Yeah, he would.
And in the US, it's this different culture. It's this more aspirational, consumerist culture where the most famous socialist outside of like AOC or something, and if she did that, she'd be absolutely, if she bought a 200k car and a £1,000 dress or something, she'd be absolutely ripped apart.
Do you think there is a threshold? He said it's like vibes based. Do you think it's like, okay, that's poor taste, that's like a very well-known designer brand for like the rich and famous, or like, that car is like clearly like well out of reach for the average person? Like, do you think it's like, okay, you could spend this much but you can't spend this much? I think that's part of the issue.
So I think his problem is no matter what he does, he'll be criticized,
right?
So,
and he knows that.
But then, and he's talking about like right wingers saying if he buys a shit car, they'll say you're trying to pretend you're poor,
right?
Which the thing is, at the same time, like, you're not. It's hard for me sometimes. I think like he's trying to appeal to certain people, and I get that. But also, I think there are people in America who probably like working class people here as well. And if you told them about Hasan, they think it's a bit of a joke too. Yeah. And I think it's like an optics thing for different people. So socialism isn't when poor, but like Bernie Sanders has like, he has his politics house, he has his home, and he has like a little cottage, that holiday thing, right?
Yeah.
So even some people say that's really excessive.
Yeah.
But then he's also 80-something years old. He's made most of his money through book deals. He used to literally like live in a cabin in the woods, like with no heating and stuff, right? When he was like a proper communist. And I'm just thinking like Bernie is very, very relatable, and a lot of people support him, regardless of political affiliation. Jeremy Corbyn's the same, right? Jeremy Corbyn, very like modest guy as well, like modesty dresses, not materialistic. And I think there's some, like I said, I can understand young people maybe being attracted to the consumerist like lifestyle, like, oh, this is a rich celebrity, but he's a socialist as well. But I think, again, there's a reason that a lot of socialists as well come from wealthy families and forsake that, or they are relatively privileged and they don't pursue a life of materialism. Like Jeremy Corbyn came from a middle class family, some other people as well. Che Guevara came from a rich family. Karl Marx bankrolled by Engels, who was rich. So it is like kind of this hypocritical relationship. But my criticism
which he's never going to change, and people can like say whatever, is I feel like as the most famous socialist in the country, you can be normal. You can buy stuff. You can buy nice things. I think there's just a level, and then, you know, of consumption, which is damaging to people because you're going to alienate people. You know, people who are on the breadline, they're not believing a socialist who buys a 200k car, right? And then you're also turning off other people. No, not like myself. I think he's a net positive overall, but it's just kind of like, people, this is not the world that we want for everyone. This is not even the realistic world, and that's why he was talking to me saying about I was a degrowth guy and stuff. So my problem with, you know, that consumption is just the culture it creates as well, like, you know, capitalist realism. And we talk about the class disparity, you know, between the US and the UK, and I think that's a good indicator because, like I said, he can't exist in the UK.
Right.
Like there is not a British Hasan doing what he does and being accepted in left-wing places. And I think it's a big difference because there's not many British socialists online like myself. I'm probably one of the biggest UK socialist YouTubers, probably like top 20 or something. Must be now. And they just don't understand the differences in how we view wealth and how we view like a lot of consumerism. Where in the US, it's like crazy consumerism. It's literally like, you've been to America, I haven't. You've seen the shops there, and it's just mental, isn't it? It's like the amount of variety. Like these Walmarts are just so big, and it's so needless as well, so wasteful. And I think that's why we're a bit different from a British perspective or whatever, because we're just not like that, and also we don't like that as well. Like as a culture, I don't think British people really love mass consumption and stuff. It's not like an aspirational society, I guess.
Okay, so we have touched on this briefly already, but you made the point in your video about how some people say, why don't we just give everyone an iPhone? And you said, you know, why would you do that when you're trying to address the fundamental inequality in the world? That's not the solution. Hasan was like, "What? No, like I strongly disagree with that." And he said he
have a PC in their pocket.
And he said
he
is unless this guy's like a degrowth guy.
They only exist because of the global capitalist exploitation. And I've actually seen some other left-wing streamers saying like, I want everyone to have an iPhone, like the same iPhone as me. And that fundamentally is the wrong way to look at how we're going to change like the fundamental inequality of the world.
Wait, what? No, it's not. No, that absolutely is not. Wait, what? Is he like a degrowth guy? Like, I don't get it. Is that, I don't really know enough about his like actual ideology or anything, but that's what? Unless he's like literally a degrowth guy, this would be a very weird take because like, no, everyone can have some form of like a PC in their pocket. I mean, the entire problem is like how that extraction of the fucking minerals work currently in the third world and how it relies on third world exploitation rather than more ethical standards that we could place. That's, I don't really get that at all.
I think you were talking about in terms of the current economic environmental climate. That would be. So do you want to?
Yeah.
Clear
So
that up?
I'm not ignorant, right? So we went traveling around Southeast Asia. Cambodia is very poor. I saw people with 2 phones. They're not iPhones, but they're like, you know, they use a lot of Chinese stuff there, right? And they're cheaper, so people can afford them. So I wasn't talking about not everyone, like socialism is when no phone. It was more that in the current economic system, everyone can't have the latest iPhone due to the exploitative labor it takes, and also all the materials, like even here it said that the materials it takes to make like the latest phones is not sustainable generally for the globe, right? It's not that I don't think everyone should have an iPhone.
In a perfect world, though, would
in
you
a perfect
say?
world, everyone would have everyone would have
Not necessarily
this,
an iPhone.
this
they have
system
the good
in a
phone.
nice future. We'd all have this nice communication device. But I wasn't talking about, you know, like I said, we've been to poor parts of the world. Everyone has a phone. Children on their phone. All those teenagers in Vietnam.
All the drivers are on their phones all day.
iPhones as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like that, but I think it was like a simplistic argument that like I want everyone to have this lifestyle. It was basically what I meant. Like I want everyone to have latest iPhone. I want everyone to have a PS5. I want everyone to have massive TVs and stuff. And my argument was, in the current form of the world and how we produce things, that's just not sustainable based on how our things are made. Like ethical consumption doesn't exist for this reason. So in the current world, we can't all have this Western consumer capitalist lifestyle. And even in the video I said, we couldn't sustain my lifestyle, let alone Hasan's lifestyle. And people coming at me saying, oh, this is a degrowth guy. People tweeting at me. And I was like, I don't think they really understand what I'm saying here, because I tweeted back at them something Jason Hickel said, pretty famous economist, lots of leftists like him, and he's basically saying everyone should have a good standard of living.
Yeah.
And in our current economic system and how it's working right now, that is something that's more achievable. So that would entail like job guarantees, less people working. So what I've seen this happen before, I think in some German places they have it, is you hire two people for the same job and they work less,
Yeah.
and they get the same income, right?
Right.
Stuff like that. And then of course like a decent standard of living. And that's the main thing. I want everyone to have a good standard of living, but in our current system, we can't all have our standard of living because the global footprint, climate change, for example, can't exist. If everyone suddenly had my style of living, the earth wouldn't last like another like 10 years or something. It's too exploitative right now. So what needs to happen is Westerners need to scale back their consumerist lifestyle, which is perfectly possible, because even if we look at like the US compared to the UK, you can see there's less consumerism even in terms of like the branded stuff, right? So why don't we take that a step further? Why like if we can imagine the difference between the US and the UK, why can't we imagine another difference as well? Like that's my whole point, is that that's unnecessary. The US consumerism is totally unnecessary. Even British consumerism is unnecessary. But I don't want people to live in mud huts, which is someone have no electricity. Like, I don't think socialism is when poor. But that was my whole thing about living with your socialist values. And I think it's the difference between me and Hasan is, I don't know if he says this himself, but I want a communist society. If he thinks Nordic socialism is the be all and end all, and that's one thing, maybe consumerism can exist. But if you want that, you recognize there has to be fundamental inequality around the world, because Norway exists in the way it does because it exploits other nations with America. It's not rich just because they found the magic pill which makes a great society. It's literally because they exploit. Norway participated in overthrowing Gaddafi, so it got access to Libya's oil fields, right? That's still fundamental in that type of socialism. So I'm arguing for an internationalist communism, which means Westerners have consumed too much and need to scale back, and we'll meet in the middle somewhere. As standards of living and development occurs in other parts of the world, we meet in the middle, and we have to scale back. But that doesn't mean our quality of life will be less, because me and you are very, like, we always say how simple we are. What would we be happy with? A house we don't have to worry about, like a house forever, enough food, and then being free to do what we want. We don't need flash cars. We don't need all this consumerist stuff. And I'm not saying like video games won't exist in socialism. Nice cars won't exist in socialism or communism, whatever. It's more that at the moment, it's unsustainable. So showing this lifestyle to people when you're meant to be anti-capitalist and saying like, it's actually okay for me to live like this excessive consumption is okay, and I'm still a socialist. Like, I'm not doubting he's a socialist, but I'm saying you have to kind of live your values. And if you're portraying to young people that this is actually what socialism means, just advocate for left-wing policies in a capitalist system and then do whatever you want. Like,
Right.
I just kind of reject that.
So a point that came up repeatedly, you said it and Hasan said it, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. So that obviously raises the point of, how far do you take your personal choices? There's obviously this whole question about how much do you individualize the climate crisis? And I think most people reject that and reject that as like a wider conversation and stuff. So someone said, just because there's no ethical consumption under capitalism doesn't mean you shouldn't try. And I kind of got that, I got that vibe from Hasan a little bit, just the way he's talking about the clothing and stuff. And
I disagree that you don't have the means to seek out less exploitative products. Like, iPhone is reasonable because it has utility. I'm not asking you to stand in a store and do hours of research, but I think you have more means than most. I'm sure then people would just say you're virtue signaling and maybe doesn't do shit. Why not then? You just made my point. I'm live 10 hours a day. What do you want me to do? Not can make content that I'm making and instead spend time I don't know, figuring out what companies are ethical or sustainable, ultimately to buy sustainable clothing? It's useless. Like, I already don't buy Shine, you know what I mean? I don't buy H&M. And the ASOS things that I own, I wear to this day. So what's the argument? Yeah, I'm buying expensive clothing because it's ethical. Could be something I could say. You know what I mean? Is how you say it? Sheen?
you could say the same with being vegetarian, being vegan. I think he still eats meat, from what he was saying in the stream and stuff. How do you feel about that?
So it's a bit of nihilism in terms of, the thing is, there's two arguments in there. It's like, do you actually affect anything or don't you? And in the video I made,
and he did say, sorry to jump in, he did say none of my choices are actually going to even move the needle.
But then I said that in the video myself.
Yeah.
I said it's not always, and that's the thing with the spirits of our politics. If we share a lot of politics, is not always about changing the world for everyone. Like, it's not everything you do is overthrowing the system. It's more like living your values, because politics come from your morals and values, not that I'm trying to make everyone subscribe to a religion. Like, if I feel this way about the world, it comes from a place of either like caring about the world. So it's like, through that kind of nihilism, maybe you can justify anything. Like, why not just go litter in the park?
Yeah.
Who cares? Not going to stop climate change. I'll just throw some shit. And then you see that in like poorer countries, like in Vietnam. It's trash heap, isn't it? Like a lot of it. So it's kind of like, you don't do certain things because you're conscious, and like, why do you maybe pick up litter if you see it? It's not all about like, oh, I have to end capitalism with my actions. And that's why I was talking about the spirit, because you have to cultivate a sort of like mentality and sort of like what we understand as, this is how you like kind of care for your world. And it's like, Native American cultures are quite famous for, being more harmonious with nature and stuff, right? They didn't do that because they thought they were saving the planet from climate change. They just did it because it comes from like some sort of, religious thing or moral thing. And for me, it's like, you live your values because that's how you like okay your lifestyle with yourself. And yeah, there's hypocrisy we all feel bad about, but then there's excessiveness, which I'm not okay with personally. And like I said, you know me, and I know you well enough as well, how hard sometimes we find it to justify purchases for ourselves. Like, it was like, if we joked about this when we were away, I spent like £40 in the end in Japan on some video game stuff, but I just didn't want to buy it.
You had a whole like moral, ethical like quandary about it.
I was just like, I don't need it, but and then I eventually it was like literally £40 worth. It was really it was like it's like one video
and
game.
Some of them were gifts as well.
Some of them were gifts as well. So like, and I think from my point of view,
and I should add that the shirt that Hasan was like getting stuck on was also a gift.
Yeah, that was a birthday present.
Yeah.
So but yeah, like for me, it's just personally, it's like, yeah, we all have different opinions and values. And if he is a left-wing person who does a net positive, that's a good thing. I'm not like trying to say he shouldn't exist anymore, but I'm just trying to say there's a hypocrisy in consumption for everyone. But then there's a more hypocrisy where you're taking it the extra step and then trying to justify that through an ideological lens of socialism, which you can justify if you want, but that sort of consumption goes against socialism. Like, if we're talking about the transitional period to get to communism and stuff, because you're not going to have that lifestyle if we actually want to achieve anything. You can't have that lifestyle. And just because you're wealthy enough, you can enjoy it, but then you can't argue that this is some sort of socialist act, spending more money that you earn. Again, spend your money on whatever you want. I don't care. I'm not telling him not to do it, but I'm just saying it's a bit hypocritical to try and frame it as some sort of left-wing act to spend money on consumer goods.
I don't think he was saying that. I think he was just saying it as a point, but I think he was making the point, like, me buying this shirt, me buying this car or renting the car, whatever he did, isn't going to make a difference to like the cause. So I'm going to do it because it's within my means and it's not any different to what anyone else is doing. But I think you're making the point about him being like a public figure with these morals and values. And I assume he's hoping to, influence people in a positive way with what he does.
If I'm missing the point in what he said, then that's fair enough. And like I said, he's a net positive overall, but I just think sometimes there's just a limit. And because Americans dominate so much, it's like, if you listen to any socialists from like maybe, wherever in the world, like not rich countries, I don't think they'd say too many kind things about this, in terms of like this extremely lavish lifestyle built on their country's exploitation. And again, this is not like a super serious issue, but it's kind of like, I used him to frame the discussion of excessive consumerism in the West.
And he did recognise that at the end. He said, I think he knows that he would get clicks on this. I don't think it was that like shallow, but it was in a way into the conversation. And I think he's
the most visible example of a political ideology versus excessive consumption, right? And I would argue he's a bigger hypocrite in that regard than most of us, because of this more excessive lifestyle, not even lifestyle, but just excessive purchases he's made in the public. And I understand he gets a lot of warranted hate for that stuff. But at the same time, we should be able to have the conversation that socialist politics should be part of a rejection of consumerism, which is fundamentally built on the exploitation of the global south by the global north. And we can't sustain this lifestyle. It's destroying the planet for one thing, and it's also keeping these people oppressed and stuff. This is how like the whole capitalist mechanism works in terms of like that Ethiopian thing I referenced. The government set that up to get Western investors.
A chatter in Hasan's Twitch stream said, you are implicitly endorsing the idea that technological innovation is exclusive to capitalist consumerism.
He's implicitly endorsing the idea that technological innovation is exclusive to capitalist consumerism. Exactly. Things like the iPhone and everything else are made by workers. Okay, the problem there is not the iPhone itself and its existence, and the problem is not like what the iPhone signifies. It's the way that commodity is produced. That is the issue. That's what you're supposed to change.
They're not familiar with my work. I made a whole video about how capitalism is ruining video games, right? So if I believe capitalism is key to innovation, why would I say capitalism is ruining video games? So in my video about capitalism ruining video games, I said, you don't need a profit motive to make good things. Tetris was made in the Soviet Union by a guy who just wanted to make it. So I don't know how I'd be arguing for a lack of technological advancement. The technological advancement would be based on how do we make stuff more efficient so we don't have people having to work for the rest of their lives. So for farming, for example, if you can automate farming and not have farmers go out of a job, that's a good thing. So you'd want to do that. You want to do that so less people work. And then one day in like 1,000 years, everything will be done by AI and robots, but they'd be doing it so we'd all be free from labor. And I don't know how without, I'd be arguing that, what was it again? Like, I'm saying basically technological advancement only exists with profit motive.
Yeah, in a capitalist society.
I don't even understand how that even factors into this, because I reject that so hard. Like it's literally, I say that all the time. Like you don't need profit motive and innovation. In fact, it destroys innovation. Like I talk about in regards to film and video games, how profit motive always destroys art. So like, I really don't understand where that comes from.
So another point that Hasan made, he said, as a socialist, it's very hard to escape the notion that you're supposed to be like Jesus as a socialist. So you're supposed to be like a really good guy, obviously, especially as someone who's in like the public eye.
Communism is a fundamental rejection of consumer capitalism, not just because it's unethical, it's because you're playing into capitalist realism where you're normalizing this and you think the mark of progress.
If he thinks that I'm normalizing consumer culture, I think he like, I don't agree with that at all. Like I'm existing in the same space that he's existing in. Okay. We live in a world where me as a singular individual has absolutely zero capacity to like undermine global capitalism with my actions. Oh, I don't really understand that at all. Also, by his logic, working class Westerners are benefiting from capitalism. They are. It's called, yeah, they are. You are a part of the labor aristocracy. You are still significantly, you are. That is true. There is truth to that. Now, there's two ways to go about it if you are a propagandist. Okay? There's two ways to go about it. To live an ascetic lifestyle, okay? And live by Spartan means and promote yourself as this socialist Jesus, or to just be a normal person, okay, who isn't making like, I'm not buying like a jet ski or some shit, you know what I mean, that I'm never gonna be on top of even, okay?
And I guess the good guy thing is defined by what the individual thinks. And I think that's kind of the point that he was making, is that like it's the same with the clothing thing. Like that's your standards, that's your morals, because I don't fit into that. Like I look like a bad person.
There's nothing about morality here like that's concrete. I'm not saying Hasan's a bad person, and I've said in the video I don't think he's a bad person. It's all about like what you're portraying yourself to be, and if you live true to those values. So that's why I'm just frustrated at him generally, because I see it now. Like I made that video and I get loads of comments of people who don't understand my point, and they're saying, you want us to live in mud huts? You think we need profit motive to make technology or some shit like that? Or you want to like literally all humans to live really primitively to stop climate change? I'm not saying any of that. But if you're seeing the extreme, like, and he is the extreme on the socialist end in terms of, like I said, I don't know any other socialist who has that much wealth and plays into this excessive celebrity lifestyle, because he's just a typical celebrity, isn't he? Like he likes to say he's an average guy. He's not an average guy. Like he can feel like one, but like he is bordering on actual celebrity. isn't he?
Mhm.
Like, I know
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
still online, but like, you know, if he probably gets recognized in public a whole bunch.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
goes to all these events. He knows quite famous other YouTubers and Twitch streamers. So like, you know, for me personally, it's not that I want him to be Jesus. It's just that, you know, and also the thing is, I think he's a net positive. So
Yeah.
if he doesn't want to change, that's whatever. I don't care. Like, I still think he's a net positive.
You made the point as well about how like you think his aesthetic is probably quite appealing. It's like, and I totally agree with you. It's like,
Yeah.
look at this cool guy, like this Chad or whatever. Like he dresses well. Like
Yeah.
he's sociable,
And
he's friendly, he's funny,
he's showing that
and
not
he's showing you socialism can
yeah.
be cool.
And it's not all like reading Karl Marx or listening to Karl Marx audiobooks.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my main criticism is that because of, and it's not even his fault, it's just a criticism in general, is that the parasocial relationship ensures a lot of people will think that's socialism. What he says is socialism. They'll never grow out that mindset. You don't. It's not just Hasan. You see it with all these Twitch streamers who are political Twitch streamers. It could be like Destiny, could be Vosh, it could be all these people. And when you get in some sort of argument with them, they repeat what their favorite said.
Right, yeah.
And if you have this mindset, you just become a clone of him. So
I will say though, the people that came and flooded your video, there was a lot more nuance in the conversation from Hasan and from the chatters.
yeah,
So I suppose the people who came to your video is almost like the specific example of people that you're talking about who will be negatively impacted
yeah.
by seeing.
Well, they
that
also
kind of
think
stuff.
I'm attacking them because
Right.
they see me attacking Hasan. But it's like with the iDubbbz thing I made recently. It's like these people get so defensive because they think they are him, sort
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
And it's like with the Hasan fans. It's like when I say this is an excessive lifestyle that no one should aspire to. If you're an actual socialist, they're like, well, I like that lifestyle. I'd love to be Hasan.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't be Hasan because I just wouldn't allow myself to be, even if I was that successful and stuff. So it's like, you know, that was my main point, is cultivating a culture that consumerism is okay and excessive consumerism is okay is my main point. But while recognizing that we all have hypocrisies, we all consume unethically because of the system. But if you recognize that, the answer isn't like, I can never meet some crazy standards, so fuck it, I'll do what I want.
Yeah.
Not saying he's that extreme, but
Yeah.
it's kind of that mindset of, well, I can't win, so fuck it, I might as well go more excessive and lavish because they'll criticize me anyway. And I'm saying it shouldn't be.
Or more that this isn't actually going to make any
But
meaningful
also,
difference no matter what
he's
we
a very
do.
sensitive guy in that, like, he shouldn't care. If right wingers are going to say you're LARPing as a poor person and you fundamentally
Yeah.
want to be less consumerist, why would you care? If people were criticizing me, people do criticize me for different things, but if people were criticizing me for something like that, I'd be like, well, f you, like, this is me. I'm not gonna like go the other way because I'm like, well, I might as well piss you off some more. So it's like, you know, and it's also the Hogwarts Legacy thing. He got quite sensitive. He's like, try to do a good thing. Everyone hates me, but I'm missing the broader point. And I think like when you are a social media creator, sometimes you just want to please people. I've seen him get quite upset saying like, you know, I try so hard and people still misrepresent me and stuff. But I'm not telling him to have a thicker skin, but I'm having to say, like, sometimes when you're very headstrong about your politics, and he clearly did this with my video as well, you just got to be like, I'm not listening. Like, I know who I am, and I know I'm a good person.
To be fair, though, he engaged with your video because
yeah,
he knew that it was coming from
Yeah.
a better place. Like, it was a good faith argument.
Yeah,
And he did address the whole like Hasan isn't good at criticism thing at the end, and he said like, look, I'm on Twitch constantly and my job is literally responding to people who are maybe like challenging me, debating me, whatever. And he said like in terms of like the levels of celebrity, I'm like bottom of the barrel, like Twitch streamer.
I don't think so. I
Okay,
think he's downplaying it a bit, but
and he also just said like, you know, I am allowed to challenge a criticism I don't agree with. That doesn't mean I'm bad at taking criticism. That just means like I don't agree with it, whatever.
yeah.
And
I mean, he wasn't bad at taking my criticism,
no,
but
and
he can be bad at taking criticism.
okay. And as someone who watched the video through, like I said, both his video, your video, this discussion, it's not that deep. It's just kind of like a way into
Yeah.
like a broader discussion. And I think he recognized that at the end. And I think that his viewers recognized it at the end, just said like, someone said it's a good video. Like he's a fan, like about you. And you know, like we're just discussing, it's just like trying to show the nuance, trying to like just debate the subject like more
The
broadly.
thing is, I'm sure we'd agree on a lot of stuff, and I think the fundamental difference is I come from a place of, okay, I'm not saying I'm the most woke, but I think a lot of people lack the nuance of capitalism being a global system, in that I think some people like to make it a microcosm of it's just America. So he's thinking about in America, well, the problem is the billionaires, and Hasan is closer to a poorer person than a billionaire,
Yeah.
which is true. But when you think about the global capitalist system, which I think Americans often ignore, it's not about him in that context. It's about him compared to the rest of the world. And it's about, as Western consumers, our purchases and how that affects the rest of the world on multiple different levels. And when you read that Ethiopian article about $26 a month for Ethiopian women and stuff, and you think about your consumption, it's like, do you want to be complicit in that? It's like me recently, I'm not voting for the Labour Party.
He would argue you're also complicit in that.
No, as much as possible.
Okay, and he did feel like, okay, you're reading this terrible thing and linking it to something I've done. And yeah, the story about the garment workers, like I think a chatter said, oh, he's doing that thing where he reads like a really terrible thing and like links it into the wider conversation, and then by association making Hasan look like
no, I'm not saying we're all complicit in it.
Yeah,
we all are, and that's my point. In people, like I said, the AOC hoodie, people want fast fashion, they want cheap goods, especially Western consumers, but they don't want to pay for stuff made more ethically. That's a problem with Western consumer society as a whole. My point in bringing that up was, we can't just dismiss it and say, well, f it, we'll do nothing. And like I said, as socialists, you should be conscious of your impact on the world, and there's negative impacts of that. And it's not an excuse to just be like, well, I know this, so I'll just keep doing it forever. And like I said, it's about living your values. And if you don't want to do that, then that's fine. And if you think your values are this and that's socialist and that's whatever. But I'm just saying, I'm conscious of these places. You go to these places, you like see poverty, or you even just read these stories. It's about being conscious of your decisions, because some people might not know that. Some people might think, oh, there's like sweatshops in India, but it's like 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's not paid great, but it's whatever.
Yeah.
Rather than it's like, no, it's 6 days a week, 16 hours a day, mainly women and stuff. And like places like Primark. But that's what I was saying at the end. Like, I don't judge someone for a poor person buying at a cheap place, which is built on unethical labor, because they don't have a choice. But
people said that as well. They were saying, I think you were saying Hasan has the means to try a bit harder. I have another question. Do you think there's a difference between what you do in plain sight and like what your hypocrisies are behind the scenes, in terms of none of your viewers are necessarily going to say you were like excessively spending on like gaming constantly. No one would see that, but say, you made a really expensive purchase and you put it in front of your followers. And I think you as a content creator, you are aware that you are having an impact on your viewers. You would like to think that you're having a positive impact. Do you think there's a difference in what Hasan did, in terms of everyone has hypocrisies? Yes, of course, it's impossible to live this like perfect life where like you're not complicit in any of this terrible stuff. But is it different when you are, I don't know, quote unquote flexing it and like doing something that is like in plain view for everyone to see?
So we're just switching to my phone quick for the last part, just because the computer ran out. But yeah, talking about like public facing people doing it compared to like private. So yeah, if people spend a lot in private, that's their own thing. And is this mine? Yeah. And I guess with Hasan, my problem mainly is as someone in the public eye, you have a bit more of a responsibility, because he influences so many people. So he's responsible for a lot of people becoming left wing, for example. And I think you have a bit more of a commitment then just to maybe have a public persona, maybe with a bit more modesty, and I think that's kind of my problem really, in terms of if he spends this money on stuff that he does not flex, like nice clothes, nice watches, whatever, it's more that it just becomes a thing, like it becomes part of his content.
Would anyone have known that was a $1,000 Gucci shirt if like
they probably
maybe the car
would have found out, but then he plays into it, like he filmed that car thing to piss people off, basically.
You could argue it was just like a little bit of a joke.
Yeah, but it's because he knows people get mad about it, right? Okay. And I'm not mad about it, but I'm just saying like that there's just a level of, and I think, like I said, coming from the UK is a very good point of reference, because the US is like anyone can become president. That's like the motto. The UK, you're never taught in school you can become prime minister. It's like, oh yeah, most of our prime ministers to Eton, like, and it's like very much like know your place. And I also think I'm kind of grateful in a way, because the UK mentality is middle class is what you should aspire to. Be content with, kind of like American dream, but a bit different. Like, be content with a more modest lifestyle. Like, go to work, have children, have a car, and obviously it's impossible now, basically. But I'm saying like that's what most people get told is the goal. You're never taught in school like Donald Trump, like aspire to be Donald Trump, or aspire to be. No, you don't even get told to aspire to be like Alan Sugar. That's kind of like a story that like working class guy made it through hard work or whatever. So I think in the context of the UK, it's just a bit bizarre. And like I said, I think the best comparison is Owen Jones. Yeah. I don't know if you can think of another one.
No. I mean, in terms of like the influencer lifestyle, not saying Hasan is like an influencer, but we've obviously got like, just like, like Chelsea, Essex, like those kinds of like aesthetics on Instagram.
He'd fit in better with them than he would have.
In terms of like the clothes and the lifestyle and everything. But yes, in terms of like influential, public-facing people who've like made their platform, made their career on being leftist, there is no comparison. Ash Sakar, you know, very well known in the UK, whether or not like she's liked by these people or not. If Ash Sakar tried to do that, outrage, because she's so she's so targeted and so hated in the media. Good example, she posted on Twitter recently that she's getting married, and she said, I want to try do it as like with as
DIY wedding or something. Wasn't it?
Like I want to be as like as least wasteful as possible. She was like, can I borrow like fairy lights from someone in London? Can I borrow this? Blah, blah, blah. And someone was like, oh my God, like, is that really necessary? Whatever. And it's just like, that's the difference. Like, and, you know, take like the Navarro media team, for example. I think they all live quite like, I don't know, humbly or whatever.
So I'd say Navarro media might be more comparable to like TYT or something. I'm not really going to put Hasan against them, but Owen Jones is famous on his own.
Yeah.
Famous for having books, Guardian columns. So he's probably like got a fair bit of money.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, again, if not my audience are mostly American, so maybe I could get away with it. But if my audience are mostly British, and I started acting like Hasan, like people would not take me seriously. Right. And I think that's the main thing. And then we can debate about whether it's strategically a good move in the culture of the US, where everyone is insanely wealthy, insanely consumerist. Is this a good way? Like AOC, is that, you know, she seems a bit more modest than Hasan, but like, is that the future of like socialism, like people like this? And AOC is a politician, so it's a bit different. But obviously, she changed it with like she became more of like an influencer. You have the old Prime Minister of Finland who acts like an influencer as well. She just resigned recently. So is that the future? Act like an influencer, but then there's acting like an influencer, engaging with your fans, and acting like an LA influencer, like Coachella, Gucci, nice car. Hanging out with other rich celebrities and rich Twitch streamers. Right. And it's like, it comes to a point where he might have started with these more political intentions, but then it's more like, I think Ryan Gosling said recently, it's a bit unrelated, he says he now sees acting as his job and not his like meaning in life because of his daughters and stuff, right? Yeah. So in Hasan's case, is political content now just a job? And the lifestyle, that's like his meaningful life. It's to supplement his lifestyle rather than the other way around now. Like, is it building for fame and wealth rather than actually wanting to build anything left wing? And that's why I'm saying, because the hypocrisy is worse with him, because there's a life I can imagine myself living in the UK which would exist under communism still.
Yeah, okay.
His life does not exist there. And I think that's my main point, is like, you're showing people, and it might be like cart before the horse, whatever, but you're showing people a lifestyle which is both unattainable for like 99% of them and also shouldn't exist. Like Hasan's wealth, even though he sees himself as like a very minor player, which he is, that consumption shouldn't exist. And especially as like a Westerner in LA as well, like all the waste and everything. So that's, I'm not, and people might hear that saying, oh, you think your lifestyle is compatible, but I'm saying I'm lucky that I am more simplistic. I'm not a materialist in like the Madonna sense.
Part of it is personal choice as well.
Personal choice, yeah. And my own personality, and I don't like wastefulness in terms of stuff I have. But then, yeah, like it's meant to be the discussion, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm 100% right and Hasan is wrong. Like some people seem to think I'm advocating for an extreme form of poverty, which I'm really not. But at the same time, it's just a discussion about how much we should live our values, I guess. Right. Like, if we know that we can't save the world through individual acts of, you know, ethical consumption or recycling or anything like that, why do it? And is Hasan's argument that, well, if it's not going to have an impact, then why would I bother? Yeah. And my argument is, no, you should still bother, because if you want to live a life true to yourself, like many people do, then you just do it. Right. Because you feel bad if you don't do it. Yeah. You feel bad that you're contributing to the problem even worse than you already are. And that's why you should live your values a bit more. So that's my final take, really.
Yeah. And he made a point at the end of the video where he said, I'm yet to come across a take on this subject matter that he feels is convincing. And I think part of his issue when he got to the end of the video was that you kind of ended on but you know, like this is just my take. I know I'm a hypocrite as well, blah 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 blah. So he felt like, okay, well look, he's like kind of undermined himself. But as you've just said there, like this is just like a wider discussion, and we're not necessarily looking for answers or solutions.
It's also just it's just like it might be a class thing. Like we come from, you know, half my family's middle class, half my family's working class. You come from like a working class background as well. I'm not sure about Hasan. Obviously, I know that, you know, he owes a lot of his success to Cenk and the Young Turks. Like he wouldn't be where he is without them, and he recognises that as well. But I'm just wondering, like, you have that, and then you have the like lifestyle of the US, which is so normalised, this excessive lifestyle, and this whole like town, basically LA, which exists to serve this lifestyle. Like it is the like the heart of consumption, with maybe like New York as well. So it's just like maybe hard for him to relate as much to how we see it when we grow up in, like, you know, immigrant communities, that the legacy of the poverty is all around us, right? Like your mum and grandma and granddad are all from the place you still live in, right? Where we've all grown up in, we've grown up around where our parents grew up and stuff, right? And you can see like how it's changed, or like how they grew up and everything. And then in your mind, I guess you're more appreciative of how good you kind of have it, considering it's, you know, with your parents, like where they started out and where where your granddad started out and stuff. And then you're living this life, like me and you always say, like, this life is enough how we're living it. It's just the financial worries, which really put us in a bad mood. But if we didn't have them, and if we had more than enough, I know both of us wouldn't feel comfortable doing stuff like that. I know if I won the lottery, even like 10 million, and I went out and bought a car for 200k, I know you'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why did you do that? And I wouldn't do it, but I can understand as well, like, it's just unnecessary.
Yeah,
as
Hasan
well.
did make the point as well. He said, I'm not going out and like buying a yacht or buying like a jetpack or whatever. He's like, I obviously wouldn't do that. I think it was because a car is like, you know, an essential means of transport when you live in LA, which is what he said. And, you know, if he lived in another city with public transit, then he wouldn't have a car and stuff. So,
which I somehow doubt, to be honest, but unless he lived in like Tokyo or whatever. I think if he lived in London,
he said Vienna, I think, as an example.
Okay. I think if he lived in London, he'd still own a car, because you kind of need a car anywhere. I don't blame him for owning a car. It's the expensive car. Anyway, that is the response to Hasan. I hope the left can now unite and recognise our differences. Thanks to Holly for giving me the proper journalistic grilling I deserved. And yeah, so follow Holly on social media at... What is it exactly?
Holly_Garrity.
Yeah, well, I tag her a lot and stuff, so just go see that. And yeah, thanks for watching it. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the chill vibe on a Friday night by the fireplace. Sorry about the audio quality. If you hear a lot of planes and noise, traffic, all that stuff, I'm talking to the phone right now, so it's a bit different. And yeah, hopefully this now ends the feud between me and Hasan. I would be incredibly shocked if he watched even a second of this. So,
can I just add, I'm still a fan of Hasan.
So I don't think it's going to carry on any longer.
And I think you look really good in that Gucci shirt.
I think the Gucci shirt does not look good, by the way. Like, if we're just going to come at it from that angle. But anyway, yeah, thank you so much for watching. And yeah, hopefully the left can now unite behind me. Bye-bye.